All right, everyone. Welcome once again to the Faces of Business. I am your host, Damon Pistolka, and I am so excited today for our guest. We have Pete Alexander with us today. We are gonna have such a great time today. Thanks for being here today, Pete.
Damon, thank you so much for inviting me to be on your show. I really appreciate your time as well as being able to reconnect with you.
Yeah, it's so great, man. So great to be here today with you. I am excited because we're going to be talking about conquering stress for better team engagement.
Yep.
It's going to be great. It's going to be great, man. So let's get going and get started here. I've got a little technical difficulty I'm taking care of here. I'm getting it done right now. And just give me just 1 second.
Look at you
Uh,
multitasking.
I'm multitasking here. I'm going to stop this. We're just going to go the way we are. Uh, so, Pete, let's start off today. You and I met a long time ago,
Mhm.
and you were on your stress reduction journey after, just about putting yourself out of
Yep.
the game. And let's start there.
Sure. Yeah. It was. Well, let's start with how a lot of us end up dealing with stress the wrong way. I grew up in an extremely dysfunctional family, and you I had to be the adult at, less than 10 years old, and
Wow.
that stress that, I was put under, I kept on trying to ignore it, and I got to be, an adult, and that stress, not being able to deal with it correctly, just kind of putting it aside and letting it simmer inside of me, that carried over for decades. And it didn't come to a head until 2008. I was dealing with a perfect storm of stressful activities, including my dad dying, and he didn't have his affairs in order. My mom, who he had been divorced many years prior, she had major surgery and didn't have the insurance to cover for the physical therapy, so she needed help. I was running my business and had, all those employees that needed my attention. My kids were small and wanted dad's attention, and my my marriage was heading for a divorce. So, needless to say, just a few things on the shoulders. And what ended up happening was, at first, I started losing weight rapidly, and this was prior to that. My body, my back was giving out left and right. I couldn't, I couldn't sit up. I couldn't stand. I couldn't walk comfortably. I couldn't sleep comfortably. But I kept on thinking, oh, it's just I'm getting older. Well, all of a sudden, I start losing weight, and at first, I was thinking, this is fantastic. I'm not doing any special exercise. I'm definitely not dieting. And I hadn't lost weight since my early 20s. I'm thinking, this is coming off. I'm eating crap. And because when we're stressed, what do we go for? The carbs is always first choice. And what ended up happening is I lost 30 pounds in 30 days. And I thought, after the 30th pound came off, I better get some blood work and have this checked out. Sure enough, comes back, and I'm a winner chicken dinner, stress induced diabetes. But you would think that I would have listened to my body about what the stress was doing to me. Oh, no, of course not. What I did was I continued to burn the candle at both ends for another 10 years until I ended up in the emergency room 1 hour from being comatose with a severe case of diabetic ketoacidosis. And for those listening to this live, basically, my body was eating itself alive because of my stress. And the crazy thing is that I just kept on pushing aside and putting aside and putting aside everything and trading my health for my career. And that is a really bad trade. And I'm totally believe that had I not changed my ways back in 2018, I wouldn't be here today. I would have not, I would have been dead by now. And it's interesting because after I decided to focus on my health, not only did my stress go down. My glucose numbers as a diabetic went down, my weight went down, and my energy level went way, way up. It was as if I had discovered like a fountain of youth. And,
Mhm.
and it's interesting now, you and I have known each other for several years, but if you saw a picture of me back in 2008 when I was first diagnosed with stress-induced diabetes, and you look at me now, other than a little bit more gray hair, I'm actually look younger today than I did, what is that, 18 years ago? Or no, 16 years ago. Let's do the right
16.
math. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's nuts.
Yeah.
That is absolutely nuts. And it's just that's what stress does to us. It ages us. And
Yeah.
so, that's why I try and keep on getting the word out to people because, you know, if you're a stressed out manager, you are not going to be somebody that people like to work with or work for. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So what I mean, so you're sitting here, you're like, all right, I got to do something. Where do you go? I mean, where do I mean? So I'm sitting here today. I'm ready to take the plunge and
Mhm,
reduce my stress.
mhm.
Where does someone go?
Yeah, it's a great question because one of the things, so first of all, fantastic if you have the mindset to be present enough to realize I need to do something about this because too many people, what they end up doing is they say, I'm stressed. I know I'm stressed, but that's just how I have to deal with it. And I don't have time. Well, when we don't have time to take care of ourselves, that's where we're going to run into the problems. So the key thing is that you have to think, all right, I know that I need to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge is figuring out what would work for you because you and I have talked about this before, Damon. Something that works for me may not work for you and vice versa. So you have to experiment with different techniques and find one or two that work for you and utilize those on a daily basis. You mentioned about the meditation that you do and walking in the park, getting in nature. Those are two wonderful ones. Meditation for me is not one of my primary ones because unfortunately my mind and I've been trained in transcendental meditation where they say, look, don't worry about your mind wandering constantly when you're meditating, just bring it back. I don't, I just don't, I'm not wired to do it well. So
Mm-hmm.
I do several other things, and one of them is taking walks in nature. That's a beautiful one that you can do, but it doesn't have to be something where you have to spend a lot of time doing it. There's activities that you can do that take 1 minute, literally. And that is something that even if you take 1 minute a day and you do that regularly, the compound benefits over time will be enormous. You just have to do it, make it a habit. And, I always recommend to people that, they say, well, things came up. I didn't get a chance to do it. Okay. Well, if you're a very busy person, you probably run with a calendar. And what I always recommend is, you know what? Block 5 minutes in your calendar every day, preferably at the same time because you want to make it a habit, and treat that appointment like you would any other appointment. So it's not just in your calendar to be ignored. It's actually something that you are going to do something with. And you just have to get into that habit because once we do it, from the different research, it says that a habit's going to be formed in anyone from anywhere from 21 to 60 days. So however long that takes, once you've made it a habit, then, you're on autopilot and you'll get
Mm-hmm.
that benefit. But you have to make the effort to do it. And just enjoy the process of figuring out what activity works best for you. Because, one of the ones that I didn't realize I was utilizing until I got trained in it as a laughter yoga teacher. I was, I was talking to somebody about when I used to work at Radio Shack back when I was in college. Those of you who remember the Radio Shack chain. Well, back then, this is before, of course, before internet, and we were handwriting receipts. It was so ridiculous. But what I remember was this one holiday season. So our busiest days were the day after Christmas, because think about this, before the internet. I'm sorry, not day after. Well, it was a busy day, but day after Thanksgiving was the second busiest day of the year, behind only the Saturday before Christmas. Well, so we were jam packed at the store, and we're just handling customers as fast as possible. And this guy came up and he says, I need to get this TV part, cable part. And so he described it, and he was describing it really a funky way. So I said, okay, I think I know what you're asking for. And I brought him over to the, coaxial cable section. And I showed him this part and I said, so are you looking for something with this end on it? And I kid you not, this guy says to me, I can't believe Radio Shack people are so stupid. And so the reason I'm telling this long story is because I remember this very specifically. Instead of telling him, where to go, I laughed. I went, and I walked away, and I started helping the next customer. As I was helping the next customer, he interrupts me. And I interrupt him back, and I said, I'm sorry, I'm too stupid to answer that question. And so he starts getting all mad, and he says, oh, he calls me a name. And I looked at him and I said, it takes one to know one. So, but everybody was laughing at that and stuff. And it happened naturally. But what ends up happening is, as adults, we don't laugh as much as we should. As kids, we probably laughed 100 times a day, if not more.
Yeah.
And that, but think about this. As adults, when we're dumped on with all those responsibilities, whether it's work, home, family, you name it, we forget to laugh. And boy, when you start laughing, and even if you're laughing, forcing yourself to laugh, the benefits of laughter come from basically your body excreting those positive hormones. Basically, you get these wonderful, wonderful health benefits. The crazy thing is, as smart as our bodies are, they don't know the difference between a real and a simulated laugh. It only knows that we're laughing. So as long as we do it for 5-6 seconds, then those positive endorphins will be released into our body and we'll get those health benefits. You just got to do it. It is. So it just, but we got to remember, I mean, if as adults, if we're lucky, if we even chuckle 5 times a day,
That's
we're
so
lucky.
true.
It really is. Think about that. I mean, you chuckled just a moment ago, and we laughed right before we got on live here. So you got 2, Damon.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I get a few more than that a day. I do, but it's not, they don't come easy, not nearly as easy as they used to. That's for sure.
Yeah. And it's crazy too, because people think that, oh, we got to have something to laugh at, like, oh, a funny joke or a funny video or something like that. No, we just have to get ourselves to laugh. And then the magic happens is, think about this. Whenever, like, where, you and I have had this, we're talking and we start laughing, whoever starts laughing first, the other person, it's contagious, will start laughing as well. And that's where the magic is. When you can laugh with somebody else, then you're sustaining each other's laughter.
Yes. Okay, so I gotta ask. I know today. I put a title on this: conquering stress for better team engagement. I think laughter is a great thing in the workplace. If it's, the right way, there's a lot of things you can do wrong about it, but the right thing is good. But I do have to ask about your certified laughter yoga.
Mhm. So, first of all, it's pretty funny to say certified because if for those of watching, if you've ever traveled to the UK, when they use the term certified, that means you're crazy. It's like when they were doing like the red meat, they'd say if it's certified red meat, it's like mad cow's
Mad
disease.
cow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, so what ends up happening as a certified laughter yoga teacher. So laughter yoga has been around since 1995. It originated in India by a Dr. Kataria. And basically, the yoga part is a little bit of a misnomer because it's funny. When I call it laughter yoga, I get people who show up with yoga mats. And we're not doing downward dog. We're not doing stretches on the floor, unless you want to, of course. You're more than happy to do that. But the reason it's called laughter yoga is because part of our laughter is that we end up doing some deep breathing along with it. And that happens naturally.
Hmm.
So that's where the yogic component of it happens. So, but I call it, laughter club so that people aren't showing up with their yoga
There
mats.
you go. That's good. That's good because when you said it, I envisioned the stretching and the other things that
Yep.
yoga that my body I would have to work at a little bit. I know I could do it if I wanted to, because it is. I mean,
Yep.
honestly, people say, "Oh, I can't do yoga." Yes, you can. That
Hmm.
you're just telling yourself that you could do yoga. I don't care if you're 100, you could do it.
Hmm. Yep.
But you have to tell yourself that. But it is good to understand how that works and the fact that first of all, you were talking about the stress reduction characteristics of laughing
Hmm.
and the deep breathing.
Yep.
And it is because I like we talked about before we got on, I walk my dog a lot. The one thing I see in society today, the people I pass on the street, because I pass a lot of people walking. We're out
Hmm.
getting some
Hmm.
exercise. We're out in the sun. Yesterday it was, it was this area, it was
Gorgeous.
70 degrees, gorgeous, light breeze. Why the heck aren't people smiling when you're outside? Why the heck is
Exactly.
I mean, because you're this, you just you could be in so many worse places, and we're out there
Uh-huh.
just relaxing, walking. But and you talk about laughter, you talk about this in general, and this we cannot walk around. It's the stress that causes us to be outside in the beautiful day like this, walking around and not just be smiling because I'm able to walk in this nice weather and
Mhm.
I'm here. I'm walking my dog, whatever. There could be it's just it's amazing to me how many people you walk by on a daily basis won't raise their eyes up to you, not smiling,
Right.
not doing anything.
Yep.
And man, I feel sorry that they have not figured out how to reduce their stress to a level that when they're out doing something like that, their mind is free.
Right, and you know what? I think a lot of the reason for that is the fact that even when somebody goes, you're walking by somebody who won't make eye contact to you, won't smile, whatever, it's because even though they're outside, they're still connected to their electronics.
Hmm.
And that's a problem because we have to be able to detox some. And I'm not talking about just, sleeping overnight. We have to disconnect. And, I always think about, now that COVID's over with, I still have gratitude for going to a restaurant because I took it for granted before.
Mhm.
And, and I remember when I first went into a restaurant after COVID started, and I thought to myself, oh my God, I so miss the buzz that, in a restaurant and the whole experience. But I'm sure you've seen this, and I'm sure people watching have seen this. There'll be tables where whether it's 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, they're all on their phones. They're not talking one word. They're not interacting in the environment, nothing. And I think to myself, why do you even bother sitting at the table? Why not just get the takeout? Because you're not getting any of the benefit here. And the reality is, you know, your phone, what you're doing is you're telling the other people that you're sitting at the table with that your phone is more important than them being present with you. So, one of the great things that my wife and I will do is we will put our phones, I'll put them away, put it in the pocket, don't leave it out, you know, turn the ringer off just so that we can be present during the meal. Because it's too easy to pick up that phone and basically, even if you just check the text or check the email or check the voicemail ping, whatever it is that's pinging you, what does it do? Let's say, for example, you and I are having a conversation right now, and then all of a sudden I go and I pick up my phone. Now, just a moment, and then I come back to you. What did I just tell you? That whatever the phone is more important, right?
Yeah.
It's just not, be present with the person that you're with or the people that you're with. And if you can get into that habit, that really works. And especially if it's with people that report to you, those people
Yeah.
are on your team, because you're telling those people that your phone is more important than them. And, you may not mean it to be that way, but that's what you're telling them. And,
Mm-hmm.
we were making the joke about as you were starting up the recording that you were multitasking. And that's another one that's a killer, because think about it. You go into a meeting, you got your computer there, you got your phone there, and somebody's, talking, we're having a conversation, and what are you doing? You're checking your email, you're checking your texts, whatever it is. Well, the problem is we do not multitask well. And men are worse than women in this for sure, but we do not multitask well. And clearly the studies have shown that multitasking actually creates more stress for us, because what ends up happening is we're more likely to make mistakes when we're multitasking. And when we make mistakes, what happens? We have to fix those mistakes. And
Mm-hmm.
when we have to fix those mistakes, that takes more time. And
Yeah.
anything you think that you saved in multitasking is totally lost, because we have to fix whatever we've made the mistake on. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially when you're doing deep think work, man. There's no way to multitask. You just need to turn everything else off. And
yes.
you've heard me say this many times. My phone notifications have been turned off for years.
Mhm.
I don't even, if I turn it on because I have to listen, I don't even recognize that it's a phone anymore when it goes off. I'm like,
Yep.
what's going on?
Yeah.
But it helps me a lot, because even that bit, and you flip it upside down so you don't see anything, is a huge help for me. But
Yep.
these distractions when we're doing these things is just a huge waste of time. And I think, just like you said, you're not only you're having to go back and redo yourself. It's not as good as not as good as you could have done when you're doing the things you're doing, but it also increases the stress, because you're trying to get your mind to do something it's really not meant to do.
Absolutely. And what's interesting that you mentioned that. So there was a study done which was really interesting. So they talked about the working on one thing, doing the mind share, one thing, versus working on 5 things. And here's the crazy thing. So you would think that basic math, if we, let's say we have a whole day, 8 hours, and we've got 5 things we need to work on. You would think that, okay, so 20% is going to be in one project, 20% on the next project, 20%, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's not the case. So if we work on one project, we will be able to spend roughly 8 hours on that project. However, if we have 5 different projects with distractions where we're thinking, okay, I got to work on this, got to work on that, blah, 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 blah. What ends up happening is we end up losing 80% of our time transitioning from project to project, our mind share. So what that means is that if we have 5 projects, we basically spend 4% of our whole day's time on each of those projects. And the other 80% of the time is lost in ramping down, ramping up between each project. So
Mm-hmm.
it makes it much better to, if you can, to focus as much as you can on whatever you're currently working on. And it's interesting, as you say, you put your phone notifications off. What I do is I go one step further and I leave my phone in a different room. Nope, I do not have it on. I do not have it next to me because it's too easy. It's too
Mm-hmm.
easy to get distracted. And I remember, I remember when my daughter was first in college, and she was sitting there doing her work, and her phone was right there, and it would just buzz all the time. She'd look at it, respond quickly on a text, and then go back, and then she'd start working on the thing again. And she said, "Oh yeah, I can do that. I can do that." But I know for a fact that if she just ignored her phone, she would save so much time. She
Mm-hmm.
really would.
Yeah. And these are great. I mean, these are great things, whether you're at work or home too, because I tell you that the same pressures are both places
Yes.
to really be able to focus and do what you do. Um, and, talking about stress in the work environment and working with people together, what are some of the things that you've seen that are effective, like in a team setting, that could really help a team or a group of people working together to be mindful of stress
Mhm.
and help the group keep it under check?
Yeah, well, first of all, being mindful of it, that's a key one. So, our bodies will give us signals that we're stressed, early warning signs, let's call it. And if we're more conscious of those, so that could be, we get obviously both mentally and physically stressed. And mentally it might be, instead of being able to focus, you've got distractions, a lack of focus. That's a key one. You might also have anxiety about something that may or may not happen in the in the future, and that's always a bad one, because what do we do as humans? Our nature's thinking, oh, it's going to obviously be horrible, whatever's going to happen. How do you know that?
Yeah.
It's not. um and another one, I know a lot of people, sadly, who will just say, oh, you know what, I all I do is I hit the bottle, or I've got some medication to take care of it. Well, all those are indicators that you're mentally stressed. So those are early warning signs there. Physically, the most classic one is when we start getting the shoulder and back stiffness, because, for those of us that work at a desk to, as our primary work, when we're stressed, we tend to hunch over and we don't even realize it. And that puts a lot of pressure on our back and shoulders. So that's one that, if we're starting to feel that, if let's say not having enough getting enough sleep or getting too much sleep, that's an indicator that you're physically stressed. um oh, bad, something wrong with your stomach where no amount of Pepto-Bismol helps. That's a perfect example of being stressed. Having uh the weight fluctuations that
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned about, like, and that's either gaining or losing weight rapidly. Those are all key ones. So you give yourself, if you pay attention to your body, and you're aware that, yes, I am stressed. That's the first thing that you need to do. And as a team, it's if the teammates are all aware of, okay, we've got some undue stress, and as a team, you come up with what works for the team. So, in other words, a great one. So, if you're the manager of that team and you've got some people who, are constantly checking their messages, let's say it's on Teams, or, it's just a regular direct texts, etc. What ends up happening is you are setting the standard. So, if you are checking your messages constantly, if you are replying to messages constantly, you are setting the standard that everybody should do that. You may not intend to do that,
Yeah.
but if that's how you're wired. So a great, like for me, part of the reason I burned out is because I am a doer. I want to have my inbox empty at the end of the day. Well, so frequently I would have bosses who would send me a message late at night, and instead of me thinking, okay, I'll deal with it in the morning, no, I just because I yeah, what would happen is I would go to bed thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's much easier for me to just deal with it. And so what you have to do is set kind of the parameters of your team and just say, okay, what is it from this certain time? No messages, no messages. Turn it off. And a great way for each person to do this is to have an end of day anchor. And what an end of day anchor is some sort of activity that you do, especially if you're working at home, but even working in the office. It's something you do that if you do this as a habit, you make it a habit, it tells your mind that you are disconnecting for the day. Because you need to do that. And so, for example, I work out of the home and my wife works at the local hospital. Well, when I hear the garage door open, that's my indicator that whatever I'm working on, the last email, whatever it is, I'm wrapping that up. That's my end of day anchor for the days that she's working. Someone else, it might be something like turning off the computer or, closing the door to your home or, real office in an office building. Those are the kind of things, if you can get into that kind of habit, you can mentally disconnect. But the manager of the team has to support that and try and enforce that, because if you have somebody who's just a workaholic, they're going to continuously want to respond to every message. So everybody has to be willing to play by the same rules.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've actually started using, because I am kind of crazy about that once in a while, because I have work time
Mhm,
almost every day, but not all day. It's like
mhm, mhm.
I'm gonna spend an hour, I'm gonna do this. So what I've started to do is that future send for messages is
Yes.
awesome, because I'll send a message, I'll do it today, but it won't go until tomorrow morning at 8:05 or
Perfect.
at that, because then I'm getting it done. It's off my plate. I'm not worrying about it anymore. And I'm cool with that. And it's off of me and it doesn't affect them. And to really be cognizant of that, we have so many electronic means to do it, to make to satisfy ourselves, because we shouldn't drive ourselves crazy with that. But if it's something you just legitimately need to get done and go,
Mhm.
that kind of thing is helped me immensely over the years.
Yes, and I can speak from it from the last, boss that I had that was a great boss. He did the same thing. So he would say, because I explained to him, I said, look, if you send me something at 10 o'clock at night, I'm going to start working on it, even though I should be getting to bed.
Yeah.
And so he changed that so that because I actually I was the one that found out about it, that what you were talking about, the delayed send. I said, do me a favor, I know you need to get it off your plate. Go ahead and just put it in the future send and send it to me, at 6 o'clock in the morning, whatever. That's fine.
Yeah.
Because then you've got it out of your plate too, so it works for both parties, and that is really important. And so just being able to have that open communication with each person. Somebody else, maybe they want to deal with it before they go to bed. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
you want to be able to be flexible enough for each person.
Yeah.
But it just takes a little bit of extra, attention from the manager to be able to know how his or her people want to deal with that.
That is knowing your people. And then too, as a leader, you can recognize that stress in people and help to, like you said earlier with talking about something like this, don't be sending that kind of stuff. But also, what are some of the things like if you're sitting in a meeting, say,
Mhm.
and you go, listen, I can tell that you're the leader, and you're like, yeah, this just isn't good. We're just
Yep.
wound way too tight
Yep.
right now. What have you seen that's worked well in those situations? Because I mean, those happen a lot every day, multiple,
Yep.
gazillion times a day across the world. Those are happening probably right now.
Yeah.
So what are some things that the leaders can do? So if they're listening today, they go, wow, I'm going to try that tomorrow.
Yeah, so a perfect example, and I've used this and I've been part of teams that have done this. It is so important if you sense as a leader that, as you said, wound up, the tensions in the room, don't keep force feeding through the whatever the agenda item is, because that's just going to continue to add to it. You know what? Go ahead and say, you know what? I'm actually sensing this. There's issue here. Let's talk about it. Let's come to a resolution with it. And there's going to be some people who aren't going to want to talk about it, but the people who need to, they can. And that's the thing is don't expect you're going to have both extroverts and introverts on your team. Don't expect everybody to talk about it. If you just go ahead and say, we need to talk about this, let's clear the air. Okay. Well, the extroverts are more likely going to give their opinion. The introverts are going to be listening and thinking about it. And what you can do is say, okay, we've gone ahead and we've got some of the stuff out in the open. Appreciate it. Always thank people for sharing that. If anyone has some additional thoughts that come up, what you can do is you could just say that come up after the meeting. There probably is in their mind. The introverts are probably thinking about, oh, yeah, blah, 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 but they don't want to say anything. Have them reach out to you after the meeting,
Mm-hmm.
one-on-one, send an email, a text, whatever it is. And then that way you can start planning the next step in that issue. Because what was interesting, I remember being in meetings where there was, for lack of a better term, the elephant in the room. And everybody was stressed. I remember one of them in particular was the rumor had it that our main competitor was buying us.
Ooh.
Okay. And it did turn out to be the case. Well, the problem is, how do you focus on your normal work when you know that your main competitor is going to buy your company, your employer, and guess what? They're likely going to keep their people around instead of you. So it's really hard to focus.
Yeah.
Okay, so in a situation like that, as a leader, you do need to get your people to be still productive, but you've got to acknowledge a situation like that. You can't ignore it. And so don't, and if you address it head on, you're going to build more credibility with your people, because they're going to realize that, hey, this person, this leader is willing to talk about the difficult subjects instead of sweeping them under the rug.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that too, as leaders get um, more time under their belt, they get more comfortable with uncomfortable conversations, because the
Mhm.
uncomfortable conversations are the ones that need to be had, but often are the ones that reduce the stress the most.
Absolutely. And, another point that you make that I want to expand upon, this uncomfortable. The thing is, and this is not just for leaders, but also for each member of the team, is realize that trying to control the uncontrollable is a complete lost energy stress maker. And that, it happens in so many situations, because when we have a stressful situation, this, Damon, whenever you have a stressful situation, our human nature is that we're going to go ahead and focus on all aspects of that. But the reality is there's only a subset of that situation that we can affect change. We can change something. We can control something. So, in any stressful situation, so let's just take that one back about being acquired by the main competitor. All right. So each member of the team, or you could talk about it as a team. And this one, now that I'm thinking of it, I would have loved to have done this. Is you make 2 lists as a team. What can the team control and what can't the team control? List them all out. And then once you have both lists, then everyone should focus as much energy as possible on what they can control. Because when we can focus on what we can control, what we can affect change in, our stress level goes down. But whenever we focus on stuff that we can't change, we can't control, all that is that's extra stress because we can't do anything about it. Yeah. And it takes all that energy. So, if you think about it, easy math, if we're spending 50% of our time on, the uncontrollable and 50% of the time on our controllable, but we take the mind share that we're wasting on the uncontrollable side and shift as much of that over to the controllable side, now we can actually reduce our stress.
Yeah.
And that's a key one that a team can do. And it's a great team building activity because everybody can list out, this or that, both from what you can control and what you can't control. And then you've just got it out in the open, and it's a great dialogue to have.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause it really, when you dig through the levels of stress, all the way top to bottom, it is in our mind. And it is how we're reacting to whatever situation we're in. And I know it's easily simplifying it, but what you just said there is a huge thing, because there's stuff that, like you said, you couldn't control the company was being sold. You couldn't control that might happen a week from now. You might get laid off because of that. There's nothing you could do about that. The only thing you could control is what you could control, how you did your job, how you approached your work and those kind of things. And as you said, by doing that and filling your time with that, you're not letting your mind worry and stew and do on all the things that you absolutely have no control over. And all it does is drive your stress level up.
Absolutely. And it's a great example of this. I used to talk about during COVID is people would just go, "Oh, I can't believe it. Somebody's not wearing a mask or somebody's wearing a mask." And, and all these things. And it's like, anyone who's a parent, you're a parent, I'm a parent, has to laugh when they say, "Well, control your kid." I mean,
yeah.
There's certain things you cannot control. And so and it's so frustrating when we focus on stuff that we can't do anything about. And so, but it feels so good when we can actually make a difference. We can affect change. There's our human nature is we feel calmer when we're under control. Yeah. And so if we can just look at those 2 lists and say, I'm going to focus on those that I can control and ignore as much as possible the ones I can't control, boy, you're going to reduce your stress enormously.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. Well, Pete, I want to finish up with one thing, because we're talking about some great things for teams. We talked about what you control, what you can't control, getting those big elephants in the room out in the open and talking about them. I think those are a couple great ones. And if people are listening, they didn't hear those earlier ones, go back and listen to that. But I do have to bring up one thing: improv. So I've seen some of your improv videos. They're awesome, by the way.
Thank you.
I gotta believe that improv helps stress a lot.
Huge. If you are comfortable being on stage, obviously. Yeah. Because what's funny is, when I did my TEDx talk and, any regular presentation, there's a certain level of stress that goes into it because, you're at a set time, you have to make sure you get all these different points together. And when it comes to improv, you have no idea. Us as cast members, we have no idea from night to night, and we could be doing the exact same lineup because we do games on stage. We could do the exact same games on stage, and one night would be absolutely completely different than the next night. And the reason is because we take all our prompts from the audience. And so what's great about that for someone like me, there's no script. And so it's literally, if you put in your mind that if you make a mistake, you make a mistake, big deal. And the audience usually laughs more when you make a mistake. So you get out of your head about it's got to be perfect. I got to be really witty. I got to do this. I got to do that. No, you just whatever comes to your mind within reason. Obviously,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
we have some children in the audience, I'm not going to be using
yeah,
some select language, etc. But you know. You just basically enjoy being up there on stage and trying to get people to laugh, and that's the thing. And be okay with if a comment, a joke, whatever you say bombs, because in fact, what's even funnier, and I've done this several times, is if I say something and I hear crickets in the audience, what I'll do is I'll say something like that. Oh, I didn't realize there were crickets here in the theater, or something like that, and people will laugh. Or I had this one where I I was imitating a particular character, and I made this reference for of an old um, commercial, and I thought it was hysterical, and I started laughing, and nobody was laughing. And I just kind of calmed down. I said, "Yeah, you're right. It's not funny." And then people just started laughing their heads off because I bombed. And
yeah,
you're able to try. The whole point is just to get people to laugh. And if they don't laugh, big deal. If you've got a cast member, they can save you with a comment, etc. It's just you go with it. You don't have that script, and you just enjoy it. And it's all about in making the audience laugh, and it's different than let's say a comedian on stage,
mm-hmm,
because in a comedian on stage, he or she is going to have a set number that they're going to do. They've
yeah,
got, okay, these stories that they're going to tell, and blah blah blah, these jokes that they're going to tell, etc. And they may or may not work. For us, the only thing that is scripted is, okay, we're doing game A, game B, game C, game D, game E. That's it. And the rest of it is completely up to the audience. So
oh, that's
it's
nice.
so much fun. And I there's sometimes some of the games where I just absolutely love, and there's some that it's like, oh, these are not my favorite, but I have fun with them as well. And it's neat to be able to be on stage and get people to laugh whenever there's when I have no idea what is going to come out of the audience.
Yeah. Yeah, well, like you said, laughter helps with stress. So I mean, it
Absolutely.
this helps everyone in the room when you're doing that.
Oh,
So
it does. And what's interesting is that when I get done with a show, I am so wired excited
oh
that
wow,
oh yeah, so I usually, I get to sleep really late after a show because I'm wired from the audience and laughing and stuff like that, but it feels so good. And that's the key is that from a stress standpoint, when we do the stuff that we love, we're passionate about, whatever stress that's involved with that is good stress.
yeah,
It
oh
really
good
is.
stuff, good stuff. Well, Pete, thanks so much for being here today. I really enjoyed it. We dropped some good information for people that are thinking about how they can get the stress reduced in their lives, their team lives, and really lead. take that stress level down, because we can let it kill us or we can beat it. That's really the choice we have. And we don't want the first one of those.
That's
So
exactly
thanks
it.
for being here today. And I want to say thanks, Ron. He had this comment in here. Jealous that you met Dan in person before him.
Oh,
yeah.
Yep. And so Dan's going to try and make it out to Seattle. So we're going to get together there, I suppose, in Edmonds, right?
Yeah, there you go. It's kind of the center point. Well, thanks for being here today, Pete. I want to thank all the listeners today. We did have a little bit of technical difficulties on a couple of the platforms, but I'll get that worked out, and we'll get the video up there. Thanks for being here today, Pete. If someone wants to get a hold of you and talk to you about stress relief, what's the best way to do that?
Go to PeteAlexander.com or reach out to me on LinkedIn.
There we go, Pete. Thanks for being here. I want to thank all the people listening and commenting and all that good stuff. We will be back again with another guest on the Faces of Business. Hang out with me here, Pete, and we'll finish up offline.